Hey guys, today we'll be working on functions in Python. So we'll be continuing the video tutorial series on Python. We're learning about functions, so functions are a big part of coding. If you don't know, functions are a group of statements that exist within a program for the purpose of performing a specific task. So you can create a block of code that just runs something, like a process. And you can just call that, you can call the name with parentheses, like you know how we call here like the print function here. That's a function. The reason why it's a function, it's because it has two parentheses here. So in a function you can enter parameters like you can enter like str1, str2. You can enter parameters. We'll go over what parameters or arguments are. We'll mention what they are. So basically, you can just enter parameters here to take in the function. So we'll go over that pretty soon. So this is a function. I'm just showing why sometimes it has parentheses, other times it doesn't. What I actually mean is why a function has empty parentheses or parentheses that are full of parameters or arguments. So parameters are also known as arguments. So that's a function. Format's a function we've used. Input's a function. I think those are the only functions we used. So those are the only functions that we've used, I believe. So now those are built-in functions. So Python has built-in functions. Those the Python developers who created the Python language, they went on and created built-in functions. So print is a function that someone created for everyone to use in a library that comes with the Python interpreter. So now we can create our own functions that other people can use if you want. So we can do that. So the way to do it is we'll do some example codes. So there's different kinds of functions. There's void functions which return nothing. They don't return a value. And there's value returning functions. So we'll go over both. We'll start with void functions. So void functions don't return a value, so we'll start with defining and calling a void function. So the code for a function is known as the function definition. So there's some rules pretty much similar to variables. I think it's exactly the same. So you can start with a number. You can use lowercase, uppercase, or an underscore character. I don't believe you can use all the symbols. So only underscores, I think. I don't even think you can use a $sign in Python. In other languages you can, so it just depends. So let's define and call a function here. So we can define a function like this. We use the def keyword. That means define, I guess. We can call our function message. Like print message or something. And again, we indent, like in other for loops and while loops, if statements, else statements, conditionals, we indent our function, so whatever's a part of the function is indented line by line. When you're finished with the function, the indentation stops, as we mentioned. So here we'll just print here, like learning Python. You are learning Python. So print here, you will be pro one day, something like that. So then once the function's over, we stop the indentation, we exit, and that's the function. And of course you need the shift semicolon. Don't forget the shift semicolon. So if we run that, nothing's going to print because we haven't called it. So now we call the function. To call the function, we can print the message function. So Python doesn't require a main function, but you can create one. So Python's kind of lenient in that way. Other programming languages require a main 100%, like Java and Python. Sorry, Java and C, C Sharp. They all, Java, C, C++. They all require a main function. So here we'll call a function. To do that, we just type in the function name, like that, like how we call a print function, just like that, without the print. Without the semicolon, of course, without the def. So just like a print, when we call print, that's how we do it. Same idea. We're calling a function here, calling a function here. So here we're to say we're calling a function. Here we're calling a function as well. And that's a built-in function in Python. And this is a user-defined function that we created. Just to specify, so now if we run this code, it prints our message. You are learning Python, you will be pro one day. So that's the output. Then we have a space printed out with that the print just prints out an empty line here. So hopefully that makes sense. So we'll go over this. We'll go over the next code. We'll go over two functions. So in Python, we can create a main function as well. So in Python, we can define a main function, which in Python they say it's a program's mainline logic. So it is common for a program to have a main function that is called when the program starts. So in Python it's optional, in other languages it's not. It's 100% required in other languages. In Python it's not required. So the main function, I always keep a main just to keep it the same, especially if you're cycling through different languages. So the main function then calls other functions. So I'll just start again for a sec. So it's common to have a main function that is called when the program starts. The main function then calls other functions in the program as they are needed. It is often said that the main function contains the program's mainline logic, which is the overall logic of the program. Mains usually control the flow. In Python you don't need to, but I'd have it. But the thing is, you have to call main. So in other languages you don't have to call main, so it's a little confusing. So I'll show you guys here. So here we'll start off again. So we'll define main. So we'll have a main function here. So here we'll print this message is from main. So the thing about this is that you'll see in textbooks and like other people coding is that they'll start writing a function here, like print message, but we haven't defined it. And if you're calling it like this and you're writing it, you probably wouldn't do that. So what you'd probably do, well, I don't know, in my case, I do this. Other people may. It may make sense to you that you want to call a function and then you want to write what it does later. Like I want to call this function, I already know what it does, and I want to call it now. I mean, I don't think that's the best way to do this. The best way to do this would be to come back later on, so we could go, okay, well, we want to create a function here. With Python, it's a little different because the main isn't called automatically. So I'll show you guys. So let's just say we have our defined print message again. We indent it, we create our function here. We tell our function what we want it to do, so we'll just say, okay, this message is from the print message function. Then here we'll say, so in Python you have to call the main at the end, so it's a little tricky because you have to call it at the end. So here we say, okay, well, we're gonna call main now, and then now we're gonna go back here and say, okay, actually you don't need to semicolon there. So we want to come back here and say, okay, well, now we want to call print message. Like that. So we want to call print message. So these are separated. So we want to call, we want to define main here. We want to define main here. Sorry, that's my cat. She has food and she's whining for more food. So we have, we're defining here, we're defining main here. We're printing a message from main. We're calling the print function method. So when we call the print, we call the print message function. So when that happens, execution jumps to here. Define print message. Now execute what's in print message. And when that's all finished, after that function's finished, we come down here and we execute the next line if there was another line of code. But in this case there's no line of code, so the program would end. But for Python, we call main at the end. So that means it's a little tricky that way. Python's a little different than other languages. So if I run this, you'll see what happens. We'll walk through it too. So as you can see, we have this message is from main. This message is from the print message function. So what happened here? So main got called at the end. So just to hold off for a sec, what we could have done is we could have pretend like this code wasn't here, which I'll do it in a sec. We could have written main and hit enter as we wrote our code, so the main just kind of drifts off to the bottom, so we don't need to write it later on. So that probably would have been the best thing to do in this case. If you're writing Python, that might be the ideal thing to do is kind of backwards, because main gets called always at the top, but it works if you kind of do that. That works too, I guess. It's just a little different, but so we'll just we'll start. Well, I guess I'll just go. Yeah, we'll just step through to the debugger. No point in me explaining it twice. So we'll just I'll save it and then we'll click the debug icon. So I'll get into the debugger here. Oops. Okay, so I'll put a breakpoint here. Put a breakpoint here, and I'll put a breakpoint here. So it's kind of wondering, okay, well, what's happening? So Python works a little different with main. So it's going to call main first. These def things aren't going to execute by themselves. Function definition will not execute by itself. You have to call the function. So that's why that happens. So I'll just save and run that. Alright, so it says, okay, well, in main we start at. It's a little confusing. We're calling main. So that means, okay, well, first we start at main. because we called the function main, which calls print message. So it's a little confusing here, so we start at main. So in this case, if we start at main and that's a function call, that means we go to main. We go to the function where it's defined. If there's no parameters, we don't worry about the parameters. We step into the function then if there's no parameters. If there is, you can note the parameters if we have some, but in this case we don't. So here we'll print the message is from main. So that's what's going to happen. So here I'll step over. And in our console you can see that it called print message. So this message is from main. That didn't get printed out yet. What happened there? Okay, let's restart that. Maybe it's getting confused here. Let's just start with that. Alright, so we're at main. We're going to jump into main, step into main. Okay, now we're in this function. Print this message is from main, because here we moved from main. Oh, sorry, we called main. Now since we called it, we're going to jump into main. Now we're going to print this message is from main. There we go. Wonder why it didn't work the first time. Okay, so we got this message is from main. Now we're going to call the print message function. So we have no variables here because we didn't define any, just functions. It doesn't show you the functions, which is just kind of stupid. Okay, it does. It shows you main, but it doesn't show. Yeah, it doesn't really show you what's inside. So we have the main thread. We have main here. We're in the main function. Now we're gonna call print message. So once we call print message, in this case from main, that means this execution is going to jump to the print message function. So we're going to end up here because there's no parameters. Even if there was, we'd still end up here. So we're here. I'm going to step in. If you step over it, it won't print it properly. So here you can see that in our threads now we have a print message thread, a main thread, and a module thread. So now we're in the print thread. So it tells you how we got there. We started at main, we jumped up to, so we started at main, we jumped up to, so we started up at the main function call, then we jumped in to the main function, then we jumped into print message. Now we're in the print message function, so that's what the threads are on the side. So now we can print, now that we're in this function, we can print this messages from the print message function. We'll execute it. And there we go. We got the two strings that were outputted to the user. And then now the print message function call is complete. So I'll step over. We'll revert back to main. It's going to check if there's anything more to execute after main, which there isn't. I'll step over and the program's done. So that's your introduction to functions. There you go. We'll be continuing with the next video. We'll be doing functions for a while. Could be even 10 videos long, so we'll see. This is starting to become perhaps a long series because I guess just the way it's laid out. But yeah, there's a lot to cover. We'll continue in the next video. We'll continue functions. We'll be working on passing parameters and all that. Then we'll work on. So this is a void calling function, which means it didn't return any value. So at the end we could have returned a value. So we'll go over that value returning functions later on. And then after that we'll not sure what we're doing after that, but we'll get there. So after we still got more void returning functions, parameters, all that. And then after that we'll be moving on to probably some more complex functions and all that. So yeah, then we'll be doing a coding project pretty soon too. So yeah, so if you guys like the video, you can give me a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel if you like for more programming videos and investing videos. And I'll see you guys next time. Take care.